Hello friends, welcome to EduTap. Today we will have another interview series of EduTap by Mr. Nitin Kakerwal, who has cleared SEBI Grade A. Time and again, aspirants have told us about their hard work and the amount of effort they have spent in while preparing for RBI Grade B, SEBI Grade A and NABARD Grade A exams. But today, we have a candidate which has a very unique kind of preparation. Mr. Nitin Kakerwal has been able to clear SEBI Grade A exam with just of 15 to 20 days of preparation. That is really commendable. So I would like to congratulate Mr. Nitin Kakerwal for that.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to give a brief introduction of Mr. Nitin and then we will start with his strategy. Nitin is an IIT graduate from IIT Delhi. He has done his mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi. Then he has worked in Indian Oil for 2 years from 2013 to 2015, and after that he decided to quit Indian Oil to pursue his career as a civil service aspirant. From 2015 to 2017 he prepared for civil services, but as usual he was not able to clear that exam, and as a backup he decided to look out for other options. And then in 2018 he cleared an exam and got a job in Ministry of Panchayati Raj, but then again he was looking for much better job opportunities, so he decided to prepare for SEBI exam as and when the notification came for SEBI. So today we will get to know about his strategy, how did he prepare for SEBI exam in such a short span of time. So my first question to Nitin would be, which is a very usual question because I am also flabbergasted by the fact that he was able to clear this exam within 15 to 20 days of preparation. So how do you manage to clear such a competitive exam by just preparing for 20 days or say 25 days?
Sir, normally in any exam, sir, there are 2 or 3 or 4 things which are the most important parameters to be successful in the exam. Among them was number 1 is hard work. And number 2, I would say to an equal measure is, sir, the right guidance. Sir, in my case, I had a very limited time. So I had no option then to put in intense amount of hard work. So during the last 10 days, I remember not even one day was there when I had slept for more than 3 or 4 hours, sir. So that thing worked for me. And number 1, and more importantly, I guess, is the right guidance, sir. There were many of my friends who were preparing for RBI and civil services. They guided me, and through them, I got to know about EduTap, sir. So I then decided, because I have a very limited time, I need to trust my guide for that. And I just trusted my guide wholeheartedly and then went for it, sir. And finally, it was very fortunate that I cleared the exam, sir.
So EduTap was your one and only source while preparing for SEBI Grade A?
Sir, it was my primary source. Yes, we do refer to sources, but my primary skeletal source was EduTap, sir.
Fine. So now I would just like to tell you about the marks that he scored in phase 1, then we will listen to his strategy for various sections of phase 1. So Nitin scored around 16.25 in reasoning, so he was just able to clear the reasoning cutoff by 0.25, remember that. Then in SM he got some really good marks, 28 out of 40. Then in Quant he got 20.5 marks, that is again good. In English he scored very high, 27 marks out of 40, and in GA he scored around 25 marks out of 40. So that seems to be really good scorecard, overall balanced, and I think he scored really good marks in SM and English, and the point where he had his luck was reasoning. He was just able to score 16.25.
Yes,
so I would like to start with SM, securities market.
Yes, sir.
You seem to have scored really good marks.
Yes,
what was your strategy and source while preparing for SM, and what was going in your mind while preparing for SM, because it was entirely new for you. You might not have read that while preparing for UPSC or as in your IIT days. You would have never read about that.
Yes, sir.
So how did you manage to convince yourself that I can do this?
First of all, sir, a little bit of background. Sir, whosoever be the aspirant in any exam, specifically in my case UPSC, sir, you would come to know that any aspirant likes economy. Economy entices aspirants. And for me, when I filled the form, we know that finance or financial markets or capital markets is a subset of economy. Having said that, that doesn't mean that finance is a very concise thing. It is a world in itself. So, sir, number one, I knew that in a way, I can do it because it is a subset of economy. But then again, as I said earlier, sir, it is the guidance, sir. Without the right guidance, it is not possible to finish the syllabus in the apt amount of time, in the shortest possible time. So for me, I relied on EduTap primarily, along with my references to where, be it online, offline, because through my economy preparation and all, I had some idea about markets, capital markets, finance markets. But then EduTap gave me the overall structure of preparation, and my references also included online sources such as Investopedia, sir.
Fine. So you find EduTap's course for SM really comprehensive while preparing for SEBI Grade A?
Exactly, without fail. I must take this opportunity to even congratulate sir, because we were, as sir said, I was amazed and in a way flabbergasted to see, because this was the first time that the exam was being conducted in such a mass scale, and how sir had put the syllabus in such concise and understandable form. So I, having gone through EduTap once, I never thought that I need to look up somewhere again, because for me it gave me the kind of totality that the exam required.
Thanks, Nitin, for your appreciation. But I think these are really the efforts of candidates which are helping them to clear these exams. Yes, we are guiding them, but then again we are guiding a lot of students. Like, yes, but at the end it is the effort of the candidate which counts. Now moving to quant reasoning and English, what was your strategy? Because it's a general feeling that being an IITian, you have now very good aptitude and you need not prepare for quant reasoning and English, yes, and you can just go on the exam day and you can crack the quant reasoning and English section. Is it like that? What was your feeling while preparing for the exam and while giving the exam?
So regarding quant reasoning and English, I would say that substantively yes, having a background helps. It is fine, absolutely fine. I trust my knowledge of English, for example, or my quantitative aptitude. But the point about competitive exams is, sir, there is a requirement for this exam. Any exam, not just this exam, there is a requirement and you have to meet it. If you don't meet it, it is a competition. Other people are preparing. They will skim past through. So ultimately, there is a requirement for these exams. The requirement is practice. So it is an indispensable condition. It might work for some people, but to be short and to be honest, one has to do with the requirements, sir.
So that is clear that one has to do with the requirement. So what was that requirement in your case? Did you first study the basics of quant reasoning and English, or you relied more on practice because you thought that I already knew the facts and the basics, I should rely more on practice? So what was your strategy?
In my case, sir, as I already said, I had full faith over my quantitative aptitude and English. So I relied primarily on practice, sir. Also because I had a very limited time. But then the mix of two factors, it was all practice for phase one, or for phase one to be precise. I had also limited time, so I just did a lot of practice. Skimmed through previous year papers. There were a lot of free papers previous year available on EduTap as well. So that was my starting point, and a lot of mocks and a lot of practice, sir, to be precise.
Fine. And what was your strategy for GA? Because GA is something which is very comprehensive. You cannot concise in within, say, 3 or 4 chapters.
Yes,
it's like a separate domain altogether.
Yes, sir.
So what was your strategy with respect to preparation? That how many marks you targeted while preparing for GA, and how did you study for that GA part?
So regarding GA, I would say that because this exam was being conducted for the first time, so the only precedent available was either RBI or NABARD. So having gone through the previous year papers of both the exams, it was evident that first of all the quantum, the time, quantum of time or the quantum of period that is important for vis-a-vis GA is the last 4 to 6 months. So you need to focus on that, because it might so happen that this year might be an exception, but the trend was 4 to 6 months. So number one, 4 to 6 months of general awareness. But at the same time, because I come from a UPSC background, the kind of questions that are being asked are entirely different. It can span across every domain, right from very conceptual ones to very trivial ones, like who won the award and who wrote this book. So I know that is a very mundane exercise, but again, that is the requirement of the exam I was talking about. You need to do, you cannot dispense away with. So I had relied on EduTap material, sir. okay, because again time was limited, so I knew that I'll do for the last 4 or 5 months. So EduTap material was number one. Number two, I relied on bankers Adda because my friends had said, even if it is the same thing, you just read from two sources so that there is no boredom. And number three, I had also relied on Vision IAS notes, sir, because that is a very comprehensive material that is available in the market, and we should not shy from referring to whatever sources, because ultimately whatever helps in clearing the exam is beneficial. And ultimately I practiced from a lot of I gave a lot of mocks, month-wise, whole GA mocks and all, and whatever I thought I would remember, I just kept it in my head. Otherwise, whatever I could not recall, I just wrote it down, and a day prior to the exam I just referred to that, because again you cannot refer to the entire GA one day before the exam.
Fine. So basically your strategy was that to retain for a longer period of time, you made some notes, whatever you were forgetting while attempting questions.
Yes, sir.
And then you made sure that you revised that before the exam.
One more thing, sir. My strategy vis-a-vis GA was to do it at the end, but that was my strategy. So I did it 4 or 5 days before the exam, because ultimately the retention part of GA is more than the conceptual part. So again, that is my strategy, but one can devise ways to basically prepare for GA.
So
but this was the overall skeleton of
So basically you decided to do GA at the last, so that there is no need of revision, because you are anyways doing it at the last.
It shouldn't happen, no, because trivial stuff you remember, then you forget. It is nothing you understood. It is more of retention. So I'll retain it, I'll just reproduce it in the exam. That worked for me.
Great. And now we come to phase 2. So basically in phase 2 again, he has scored around 64 in FM and ASI. Then I'm really happy that he scored 81 in English. I mean, that's a huge score, and it is due to English only that he is able to clear this exam, and his name is in the final list of SEBI Grade A selected candidates. In SM, he's not able to perform good in phase 2. He scored just 52. We will get to know about the reason for that in a while. So I'll start directly with SM. In phase 1, he was able to score, or rather you were able to score 28 marks out of 40, which is around 70%.
Yes, sir.
And in phase 2, you scored just 52 out of 100. It means 52%. So straight away you are down 18% from 70% to 52%.
Yes, sir.
What is the reason of that?
Yes, sir.
Was your preparation for phase 1 different from phase 2, or you found that phase 2 paper was very difficult?
Yes, sir.
Or was there any other reason that you got such a lesser amount of marks in phase 2 SM paper, though you have got 28 marks in
Yes.
phase 1 paper? What was the reason?
So primarily when we talk about the level of difficulty, it was both a surprise as well as I know, because of the circumstances, that my marks would not be good, because the level of difficulty was the same. It was not much different. The level of difficulty was more or less the same. But then, sir, as you know, sir, I'm already working. So there were some official commitments, and that too of a very serious nature. We had a national meeting. So I had very limited time, and that paucity of time really killed me, sir. But on top of that, the most important thing, and herein I would like to emphasize the importance of revision, sir. The lack of revision on my part, in my case, that was because of the paucity of time, but the lack of revision really killed me in the exam, because I still remember there were like 4 or 5 questions which was so easy. There was one lecture on buyback regulations, I remember. There were 2 questions from it. I could not revise. I knew I had made notes, but I was not able to revise. Second was a very trivial question on the date of when SEBI had started functioning, and to not know that and to clear SEBI is, in a way, that is a bit I don't find that good for an aspirant. So there are certain questions which are very easy, but we take them for granted. But then ultimately, if you don't revise it, again, this is again one of the other important factors to basically compete in a competition and clear. So revision is very important, sir. These 2 things basically kill me in this.
Fine, that's a very good point, and we have put an emphasis on that every now and then, that revision is very important. So the same amount of reading helped him score 70% in phase 1, but he was not able to replicate that in phase 2 just because he has not revised, and he was not able to answer some of the easiest questions asked in that exam. So please make a point that you revise your content, whatever you have read. Now next we move to English. So here I am also bit excited to know that how he is able to score 81 in English, though on average I have talked to many candidates and what they have been able to score is around 63, 65 and 67, and he is straight away into 80s. 81 guys, that's a huge score. So Nitin, tell me about this, that how are you able to score 81 in English? I mean, was there some kind of special preparation, or it was just a fluke that you have prepared something and it was asked straight away in the exam? What is that you are able to score 81 in English?
So first of all, vis-a-vis English, there is one or two general mantras which one needs to remember, and this helps, be you be an aspirant or not. One is, if you read more, you write well. And second is, if you listen more, you speak well. So I am in a habit of reading, sir, be it newspapers, books. But as an aspirant, reading newspaper is more relevant to the context. So I have been reading newspapers. Then I had a particular strategy for the exam, sir. My particular strategy was to attempt the essay in the last, because if that is a personal thing, because if I start with an essay, it might so happen that I might take 15, 20, 25 minutes and then I might rush through. But then again, it depends on the person. It is not universal. Vis-a-vis the essay, that is one thing, because other two are a bit easier than the essay. I had a particular structure of essay which I had prepared and I had practiced, and specifically with regard to three pillars, sir. The three pillars of an essay are the content, the structure, and something unique. This is something I have innovated. All the people have something unique about their essays and the way they approach essay. But number one, with respect to the content, sir, I think, sir, it is because I read a lot, and especially newspapers. Newspapers give you everything, sir. They give you content, they give you opinion. We might talk about it later, so it will help in the interview as well. So content came from my reading, especially newspapers. Structure came through my preparation for civil services and the answer writing. So I had a set structure according to which I approached the essay. And number three, the unique thing that I applied in the essay was, sir, that I have a bouquet of quotes. Okay, so bouquet of quotes, I have context specific quotes, and that is not to say that I jot down quotes for the sake of it. I come across good quotes from great people, great men, great institutions, and I jot it down. So it has evolved over a period of, say, certain months or years, and those things are imbibed in me. For example, in the topics that we got, I wrote on climate change. So again, anyone preparing for any competitive exams knows a lot about climate change. So first thing is to basically compact it within 200 words. So that was not an issue because my structure was prepared. So the point I am trying to make vis-a-vis the quotes is, I had a quote in my mind, like Shri Shashi Tharoor had said, our environment is a shared blessing, its future a shared destiny. So this is imbibed, this is running in my blood. So I had ended my essay in such a way that the ending and the quotes are coterminous. So I think that might have worked out for me, sir.
Fine. So that's a very interesting point he has made, that there are three pillars of writing a good essay: the content, the structure, and something unique to your essay. So for content, he used the content he has been reading in newspapers. For structure, he has practiced a lot while writing or while preparing for answer writing for mains in UPSC, and his unique aspect was his quote. So coming to what you said, that the structure is very important.
Yes, sir.
So can you just brief us about that? What is that structure you have inherited or you have made, and which you apply while writing an essays either for UPSC or for SEBI Grade A?
So on a generic level, any structure of any answer, article or essay is the same. That is the introduction, the body and the conclusion. Now, this being said, my introduction contains a context. So when I give the context in an essay, the examiner knows that he is versed with whatever is happening around. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that gives a kind of positive push. So that is the first two lines of my essay, the context. For example, climate change, the context can be the Conference of Parties in Paris. Mm-hmm. Or you can refer like this. Then there is one line in which I enumerate the direction along which my essay will flow. So that gives the continuity with the context and the body. Then comes the body. Body is very simple. It is about as many dimensions as you can cover. Okay, so that there is a very, again, a generic way of writing dimensions like social, political, economic, internal security, international relations, ethical, philosophical. So you can pick out 4, 5, 6 the most relevant parameters and write points along those dimensions. Then comes the conclusion. My strategy for conclusion is the first half of the conclusion contains the issues which are unaddressed. For example, with respect to climate change, one of the issues that is unaddressed is the lifestyle change. We talk about a lot of green cars, everything, but we don't talk about how will we contribute towards climate change, our small actions. So that unaddressed thing. And finally, the way forward. And connecting to the way forward is my quote. So I think this is a very, if you practice it, this is a very mechanical way of writing essays, and if not the best, you will get above average marks using this strategy.
So apart from structure, you said that one part of that structure is content.
Yes,
and what I am inferring from what you are saying is that content comes from the newspapers you are reading.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what or which newspaper rather are you referring?
First of all, sir, any newspaper, I'll be honest, as honest as possible. Whatever newspaper the aspirant is comfortable with, I will suggest go for it, because over a period of time it averages down to the same thing. But in particular, in my case, I have been referring to Indian Express, sir, and personally I like the newspaper, and it has a lot of multi-dimensional articles and multiple points of view, so I find that newspaper very good. So I follow Indian Express, sir.
And were you able to complete your essay within the time, within the word limit, or did you exceed that, or did you write something which was lesser than the word limit?
Sir, I don't know whether it is good fortune or what, but I had completed my essay in exact 200 words, I remember.
So it was just a coincidence, or you had practice for that?
A bit of practice, yes. But the point is, because I had a structure in mind and I had the number of lines and the words per lines ingrained in my so-called programming. I know that for the intro, first of the intro, I don't have to use more than 2 lines. Second half of the intro, not more than 1 line. So I don't think that exceeding or maybe writing less will fetch you negative marks, but it is about the overall feel that you're getting from the essay. So when you have a structure, the examiner knows that there is a flow of thought, there is a chain of thought, and along that the aspirant is it gives a positive impression.
So in exam, while we are writing,
yes, sir,
are we able to know that how many words we have typed, or it's just a guesswork?
No, we get to know, sir.
We get to know.
Yes,
so by that you are able to know that I have typed this much of words and now this much.
Only for essay we get to know that we have written how many words. Otherwise in the comprehension, and I don't think, because I remember I had counted. For example, in the Prezi, the number of words I've used is only 1/3. So there I had to count. But I remember, as far as I remember, it was exact 200 words in essay.
So in essay, they show you the words you have typed, but in Prezi, they don't show you the words you have typed.
As far as I remember, sir.
Okay, and in Prezi also there is a word limit. As per the question paper, or
no, it is, I think, sir, it is the convention that has been doing rounds among aspirants that it should be 1/3. So I strictly adhere to 1/3, sir.
Okay, otherwise in paper it is not mentioned that you write the Prezi in so much of words. Fine. So that's about his English strategy, which is really unique. I mean, his approach to writing an essay, that's really commendable. I think that is the reason he has fetched a lot more marks than other candidates. Now moving to third paper of Finance Management and ESI, where he has been able to score 64 marks. So what was your strategy while preparing for FM and ESI? Because first of all, FM and ESI is huge.
Yes,
whereas security market and English were also of 100 marks, but the syllabus was very less.
Yes, sir.
But coming down to FM and ESI, the syllabus is huge.
Yes, sir.
But they are also worth only 100 marks. So what was your strategy?
Yes,
while preparing for FM and ESI? Did you focus more on FM, more on ESI, or you focused, comparatively same amount of time on both?
Yes, sir.
What was going in your mind while you were preparing for FM and ESI?
So one thing, as sir asked me the question, this thing comes to my mind, that we should have a sense of relative importance of topics. Mm-hmm. As sir rightly said, that each one of the subjects is of 100 marks. So we need to actually prioritize. We can't, just because finance and management has a huge syllabus, we cannot devote 80% of the time to that. And at the same time, for example, personally for me, English is not that tough, so I will devote a little less time. So this prioritization is based on an individual, and it depends on person to person. So one needs to work out the prioritization, number one. Number two, sir, I didn't have a background, leave alone a sound background in either finance or management, but because of my preparation for civil services, I had a fair decent amount of knowledge in ESI. So for finance and management, I had completely relied on EduTap. I cannot be more honest. And at the same time, for ESI, I had referred EduTap for current affairs, for the scheme documents, for the budget, for the economic survey, and also Vision IS document for current affairs. So all these documents I had referred to, and again, I had prepared my own prioritization of relative importance of topics, and I had approached the topics.
So, were you selective in reading topics for FM, because there are many topics like balance sheets, accounting ratios, and many other capital budgeting, which have been a kind of a regular topic in RBI Grade B.
Yes, sir.
So you might have been tempted to read that.
Yes,
First
sir.
of all, did you read those topics which were numerical heavy for SEBI Grade A? Because you had shortage of time. So how did you manage that?
So as I said earlier, I had a very grave paucity of time. So somewhere I had to cut down on something, that was for sure, because you cannot cover anything. You can't have the cake and eat it too. It is a similar situation. So sir had come out with a video after phase 1 regarding the strategy for phase 2. And also, as I had earlier said, you need to trust your guide. And compactness of resources and syllabus, that is very important. Please keep that in mind. If you have these things in mind, and I had at that point of time, so sir had listed down certain topics which we could avoid. So though he was cautious enough to say that it is not advisable, but if you have paucity of time, then you can skip these topics. So naturally I had to skip those topics, sir, because it was not possible for me to go into conceptual clarity as well as numericals at the same time. So I had skipped those topics. But the conceptual part, I ensured that I don't miss out on that, because it might so happen that I practice a lot, but then I mess up with the numerical. But if I have conceptual clarity, that will help me.
Fine. So again, the point is same, that the strategy is always there to skip some part, to give importance to some part, but that depends upon your situation. If you have real paucity of time, then go with that strategy. But otherwise, if you are preparing for whole year or say 6 months, then you should not leave anything, because time and again we have told you the importance of single mark is huge. So that is about his strategy for ESI and FM. So now I would like you to ask some very generic questions which have been asked by candidates again and again. First one is, SM is a common part between phase 1 and phase 2. The syllabus is almost same, except there are some extra topics for security law in phase 2.
Yes, sir.
So what is your take on that? Is the preparation for phase 1 and phase 2 SM almost the same? I mean, it's not the same. And what is your opinion about the difficulty level of the exam of SM in phase 1 and phase 2?
So there are two things, sir, regarding the securities market. Number one is when we have a bird's eye view of the syllabus of phase 1 and phase 2, the only phase 1 is more of the basics of the securities market, and phase 2 is phase 1 plus in depth, basically, where you told about the regulations. So you need to cover those regulations as well. But the more important point I would want to make is, sir, because we know that phase 1 is we just have to pass it. Okay, marks are not counted. So it is no one's case that you prepare for phase 1 and then prepare for phase 2. So up to a certain point, prior to the phase 1, one has to go ahead with an integrated approach, sir. If you don't do that, you are missing out, because again, it is competition. People are preparing. People give in that amount of hard work where they prepare both for phase 1 and phase 2 before phase 1. So this is one thing, sir. Number 2 is, you had talked about the relative difficulty levels. Sir, difficulty wise, both were same. I won't say that phase 2 was difficult, phase 1 was easier. As in my case, I know I had scored less because I had a paucity of time and I didn't practice. So it is just that approach the syllabus in an integrated way and do a lot of practice, revisions. So that is my advice, sir.
So SM with respect to phase 1 and phase 2, the syllabus is almost the same and your difficulty level is almost the same. It's just that you need to revise the same content before phase 2. And the similar kind of question with respect to GA.
Yes, sir.
Is the preparation of GA for phase 1 and GA for phase 2 entirely different, or there is some overlap, or there is 100% overlap?
See, sir, if for example this is a set of general awareness, then phase 2 is this. It is a subset, but more on the conceptual side, on the scheme side, on the government policies program side. And GA for phase 1 is this, plus some trivial aspects. You have to do it because it comes in the exam. For example, who won this prize, who wrote this book. So GA as a set and GA for phase 2 is a subset of GA1. I would say that, sir.
So, do you feel that there needs to be an integrated approach while preparing
Exactly,
GA?
sir. Exactly. My mantra for life, and it has worked in this exam as well, sir. Any approach for any exam has to be an integrated one, because the moment you split it into two, you are doing what for prelims or for the phase 1, you are preparing in a certain way, the marks of which will have no bearing on the final result, and basically you're missing out on your time for phase 2. So till a particular point prior to phase 1, approach has to be integrated. Maybe the last week or the last 10 days can be dedicated to phase 1, but up till a certain point of time the approach has to be integrated, sir. Because again, after phase 1 what will be left is revision, and if after phase 1 you do the syllabus of phase 2, then there is no time for revision, and then you'll clearly miss out. You are out of the competition only.
Fine. So again and again he is telling us the importance of revision, and please note that revision is very important because you are reading a lot of content, and if you are not able to absorb that, retain that for a longer period of time, then there is no use of what you have read. Now let's move to the interview stage. So basically I've already told you the amount of marks he has scored in phase 2, and then he scored around 9 marks in an interview. So let us first hear from him that how was his interview, what was asked from in the interview, and then why did he think that he scored on a lower side, because 9 marks in an interview as per the marks given by the panel is not very huge amount of marks, because generally people have got 10 or 11. So 9 marks is slightly on a lower side. So let's first listen from him that what kind of interview was that? Was it a stress interview? Was it a interview about knowledge of securities market, or was it an interview on your IIT background? What was exactly asked in an interview?
Sir, a little bit of background. Since my interview was on the second day, the interviews had started on 3rd February and mine was on 4th February. So we didn't have any clue as to in which direction the interview would proceed. But one thing was for sure, because you cannot mess with the securities market part and the awareness about securities market, but otherwise you are a non-starter for SEBI. So my stress was more on the securities and technical part. I had subscribed to 2 newspapers. One was Indian Express, other was a Financial Daily like Live Mint. So I was preparing along one of my friends, so we were stressing more on the technical part. But on the day of the interview, my friend's interview was on the first day, so his feedback was they're not asking anything which is technical, it is more of a conversation. So I had to tweak my interview preparation on the final day on those lines. And as he had said, and unexpected lines, my interview was more of a conversation. It was more about basic HR questions. Tell me about yourself. What do you do? Where do you work? How is it related? Why SEBI? Why you are good for SEBI? So it was a non-technical interview and a normal conversation. And my guess was that I had a good interview. And I was hoping to get good marks, but when the marks came and I did a post facto analysis, I realized, and that is very important, because when you supposedly have a good interview and you don't get good marks, then that thing, if you are not able to make out, then that is not a good thing. So on post facto analysis, I found out that there were certain infirmities in my approach. For example, questions on why SEBI, why I am the best fit for SEBI, the answers were more cliche on my part. I could not establish, primarily maybe because I had a non-finance background, or my job experience is nowhere related to economics or basic, maybe the securities market. But then whatever you answer, questions like this should be answered with a personal touch. If you have a personal touch, background is fine, but then you need to convince them that you are an asset for the organization. So maybe I was not convincing enough for them. And at the same time, one or two more things happened that I was sitting down and my mouth got dried up. I forgot to ask for water. They didn't offer. I think people over there are not sitting to eliminate you. They are sitting there to help facilitate you to basically come out with your truest personality. So my inhibition that if I ask water, then what would be the kind of impression that they'll get? These are made up inhibitions. This shouldn't be there. We should just see them as facilitators who are facilitating our truest personality to come out. And rather we should concentrate more on the substantive aspect, like convincing them that yes, I am the best bet for the organization. So yes, there were some infirmities, and but luckily I got through, sir, finally.
Great. So I think the learnings from his interview is that first of all, we should ourselves be convinced that why we are appearing for this job. Yes, we all want job, we all want security, but there has to be a bigger reason behind that. Yes. Why this job? That has to be internalized. You have to sit, you have to analyze that this is my strength. This strength will help me perform well in this job. That you can only analyze. Nobody can tell you. Even if you go to 100 people, they cannot help you. That only you can sit and analyze. And I will not say that you have to mug up your answers. Just internalize that why I'm fit for SEBI. Am I good at policing? Am I good at implementing policies? That you need to analyze and convince them. And when you convince them, you have to give examples from what you have already done. Maybe in your school, maybe in your college, maybe in your previous job. That doesn't matter. That might be at any scale, but you need to convince them with examples. That would help. So,
if I may be allowed to add,
sure,
because we are talking about personality test interview, we tend to forget that interview is a word which is in common parlance. Basically, it is a personality test.
Mm-hmm.
So, this thing should be very clear in our mind that personality test means a test of personality and not merely knowledge. Knowledge propels your personality. Knowledge sharpens your personality. But it is not just a test of knowledge. So, whenever, the formation of personality or basically fine-tuning of personality takes time. But then, okay, fine, we live in a kind of country. There are a lot of problems. But the point is, the day we start we evolve to basically give the exam, at least that day onwards our process of personality refinement should start. And it is not a very difficult thing to do, sir. It is through newspapers, it is through listening people, it is through listening good experiences, and these are very small things. If you do it at the last, things will crumble up. So this preparation for personality test should be a part of our schedule, and this should begin from day one itself, sir.
This shall be a part of our daily life, and this should come from our environment itself.
Exactly, sir. Exactly. Not that I've cleared phase 2, now I have 10 days, so I will read 10 things. So that people over there are very experienced to make out who is expressing his true personality and who is, I shouldn't use this word, but maybe faking it or what. So this thing should be kept in mind, sir.
So, since we're talking a lot about interview, so I am also curious to know that how many people were there in the interview panel? I mean, do you know the profiles of those people and what kind of questions were asking? Was one person asking questions from a particular domain, or all of them were asking mixed questions like on HR, on knowledge?
So, sir, what happens is, specifically with respect to the SEBI interview, I was asked to basically tell me about myself. So when you are given this open-ended question, there are two ways. Either you fumble, either or the other way, and the promising one is that you can steer the interview in your direction. So there were 3 members in the panel, sir. One was the chair and other 2 were sitting. So the chair starts with the interview. He asks tell me about yourself and questions, and at the same time one of the members is noting down certain aspects. Okay, so he might, and in all likelihood, cross question you at a later point of time. So and that person is, I think, more on the technical side, because whatever you are uttering, again this is a trait of good personality, that whatever you are uttering, that is a measured and balanced one. You're not uttering for the sake of it. So that person will note down. And the third person, I think it was ma'am in my case, and her questions were a mixed bag, sir. So chairman sir was like the overall aspects of the person, including technical, HR, everything. One person was specifically for technical, and especially in context of what you are speaking. So there are people to analyze you. It is not just they are asking questions, we are giving answers, and they are just evaluating us. They are evaluating the course of the interview also takes the direction in which we are taking or we want to take.
So what was your duration for the interview?
It was, I think everyone's interview lasted for like 15-20 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yes.
And before the interview, is there somebody at that place to comfort you, maybe HR from SEBI or someone from SEBI?
Sir, I think in my case, I on my own went to the HR and started talking.
Okay.
But because that in a way gives you comfort. You come in a kind of comfort zone where you relax, you hold your nerves. Otherwise, because for example, mine was the last interview for the day. So it was, everyone was going in, coming out. So it tends to be a bit nervous as well. So you find out ways. There are many ways. You take a walk. I got my earphones, was listening to music. I was talking to the HR, talking about the company. So there are ways to basically smoothen your nerves.
So that's a really interesting story. I mean, if you start from his phase 1 preparation to phase 2 and his interview, I mean, it's a mixed bag. He has scored very low in some papers, he has scored very high in less papers. But the important point is that he is able to analyze the reasons. That why did he score good in English? Why did he score low in securities market? So although he is cleared, but that is something you should keep in mind while you are giving mock test papers or you are reading something. You should be able to analyze that if I'm performing bad, why I'm performing bad. If I'm performing good, why I'm performing good. What can be done to further strengthen your strength or to improve your weakness. Now let's come to the last part of this interview, and I would like Nitin to ask or give some message to our aspiring candidates. What shall be your message for the budding candidates for the next year?
So as far as my message is concerned, sir, I have 2 points in mind, and just prior to this you said something, so I have one more point as well. So I'll basically delve upon 3 points, sir. So number 1 is regarding the strategy, and one thing we tend to believe is that there is one single strategy for the exam. It is not the case, sir. Everyone has unique strengths and weaknesses which we need to analyze, which we need to sit down, think upon and build it upon. So number 1, there is no single strategy to clear the exam. For example, in my case, I cleared it in 20 days, but I would not advise because it might so happen that 20 yes, it is too less. So you need to give proper maybe for example 2 months, 3 months, maybe 10 days for some people. So there is no single strategy. There are some things which you need to avoid, which we have talked during the course of the interview. Other than that, one can chart his or her right strategy. Number 2 is the requirement of the exam. So for example, we talked in the beginning that for example, some people have a good quantitative aptitude, some have good English, but that doesn't mean that you can dispense off with the requirement of the exam. Exactly. If practice is an indispensable requirement, it is. You don't do it, others do it, you lag behind, others clear. And number 3, sir, as you were talking about the mocks, this point just struck my mind. That yes, as sir has also said, mocks is not to basically enlighten your spirits or to basically suppress your spirits. It is just a way of analyzing your gaps. Okay, marks and mocks doesn't matter. The authority or the whosoever is preparing the exam, they are at a different level. Mocks will help you analyze your gaps and at the same time work on it. But if you take mocks as a proxy for the basically the performance in the final exam, then that I don't think it is a correct way to approach mocks. Mocks have their own their own importance, and that is to basically you assess your gaps, work on it, and basically excel in the final exam, sir.
Really well summed up. I think these 3 points are really important that everybody shall keep in mind. So today we had a very interesting session with Nitin, who by all standards has defied gravity in this case by clearing this exam within just 20 days. So I would just say that as he has told that his strategy should not be the only strategy. Yes, you can do that within 20 days or maybe 40-50 days, but it is advisable to start early so that you avoid any chance of being rejected, because I think somewhat his luck also came into picture, though that was his strong point that he scored 81 in English, but if he would have scored rather 2 or 3 marks less in English, he might not have been in the finalist. So smart work is the part or shall be the part of your strategy, but do not forget that you should be spending the right amount of time and effort, and there will the hard work count. Even Nitin has told us that though we shall say that this is smart work by clearing this exam in 20 days, but in those 20 days it was intensive hard work. He did not sleep for more than 3 hours in a day. So try to make your own strategy by a right combination of smart work and hard work, and be positive. That I always say, that be positive. I think in Nitin's case, at the start of preparation, he would not have read even a single word about finance, ESI, FM. It was his first attempt, but still he was positive in spite of his failures in UPSC. Right. So be positive and give your best. If not this time, next time it shall help you, and next time you might be in the top 10 if you have prepared the earlier year.
Yes.
Right, guys? So with this short message, we will like to close this interview. Thank you, and we shall be coming again with strategy of lot more candidates who have cleared SEBI Grade A, RBI Grade B and NABARD Grade A. Thank you very much, and I would like to thank Mr. Nitin to spend some time and share his strategy with all the aspiring candidates. Thank you once again. Goodbye.